Hello there, Nat Edwards and Riley Beveridge with you on AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app. Riley, after a long wait, round 2 is just around the corner. Yes. And it all kicks off with a blockbuster Thursday night clash, Richmond and Collingwood at the MCG. Today, we're taking a look at the Tigers. It's been a long time between drinks, March 19. Their first round clash against the Blues, and they won that pretty comfortably. As it stands right now, what is the state of play at Tigerland?
Everything's pretty good at Richmond. They've won 2 flags in the last 3 years. As you said, they got a comfortable victory over Carlton in round 1. We'll get a better test of where they're at in round 2, playing against a Collingwood side that, I know you said it's a long time between drinks. How much can we evaluate a side on round 1 form? But they were actually very good in round 1, Collingwood. They thrashed the Western Bulldogs, who I tipped to be one of the premiership favourites this year. So 2 sides that should be amongst the premiership contenders playing in round 2. Everything's pretty good, as we said. A relatively fit list. Basher Hooley with that calf injury is the only real concern. Noah Cumberland, a youngster, did his ACL throughout the return to training period, which was really a big blow for him. But the Tigers probably weren't expecting much from him in 2020. So everything's pretty good. They did what they had to in round 1. They're sitting pretty comfortably, as we said. And at the moment, they're still the team to beat, I think, in 2020.
Does anything actually need to change from round 1? It's kind of hard when you win so easily.
Well, I found it was interesting that Damien Hardwick said throughout this little shutdown period that he thought the 2020 flag would actually be harder to win than any other one. Now, throughout round 1, I don't want to say they were in cruise control, but they went out to a 50-point lead. They were doing it easily. Carlton did actually come back, so they got to within 15 points in the last quarter. I just hope they're not in cruise control for too much longer. I hope they can click back into gear from round 2. But knowing the professional sort of methodical team that they've been over the last 3 years, I'd expect that to be the case. If there's any team that's going to be switched on from round 2 onwards, I think it's going to be the Tigers. But as we said, that game against Collingwood is going to be a real test of where they're at and how good they actually are this season.
Is there a player who looks like they've benefited most from ISO life?
Well, it's actually interesting because going into it, I thought this could be a period where Basher Hooley can get his calf right, be back for round 2. He's now a player that's probably unlikely to play in round 2 with that lingering calf injury.
Yeah, he was just running laps the other day at training.
Yeah, there's a couple that I'm really keen to see. Oleg Markov's one that I'm actually looking forward to watching when footy does resume. He missed out on round 1. I hope he can get his place in the side. A quick player. They might even use him off halfback with Basher Hooley out injured, out of contract this year. One of those players that, I mean, if there are list cuts, you'd think he'd normally be pretty safe. You'd think that he'd done enough in the last couple of years to warrant his place on the list. But given that we think list size is going to be reduced, it's a really interesting period for players like him. And I hope he can get crack into this round 2 side and really show his worth, because he's a player that I've watched a fair bit throughout the VFL the last couple of years, and I really like his speed and spread.
And finally, anyone we should be watching from an AFL fantasy point of view in terms of maybe a sneaky trade before the season resumes?
Well, one player that I really liked from round 1, I've really liked him for a long time, is Dion Prestia. And I think he could be a valuable point of difference because he's not necessarily a player that you'd start with in your side. He's a bit expensive. He's not a consistent scorer, but he scored 89 in round 1. I really like him playing in that midfield, especially with Dustin Martin pushing forward now more often. Was really good in round 1, one of their best performers. He's been one of their best performers the last couple of years. He's not the biggest name in the midfield in the competition, so I don't think he'd be in too many sides. He's one, if you want a point of difference in the midfield, I'm expecting a really consistent year from him.
I like it. Thank you, Riley, and we cannot wait for footy to return June 11. Make sure that's in your diary. Stay with us here on AFL.com.au as we count down to round 2.